Berserk is a manga series I have tried to get into before on the channel, but it just wasn't quite my taste. I quite notoriously, among my fan base, gave it a fairly negative review after getting through the first little arc. And upon reread, I still stand by a lot of the criticisms I said in that first review. Granted, I am more positive as a whole, and this review will largely be a walkthrough of the story of Berserk up into the Golden Age, because I really want to fully get my thoughts out here. So spoiler warning if you have not read Berserk, but if you'd like to follow along regardless and hear a rough summary of the events of the first few stories, stick around because this is going to be one of the most detailed reviews I've ever done. What you need to know about Berserk, though, going into it, is we are following a demon hunter called the Black Swordsman, and his immediate introduction really does do an effective job of setting the tone and personality of this character. He is making love to a woman who turns out to be a demon, and then the demon is like, aha, I have trapped you, but oh no, he knew it, and he's saying, no, I've trapped you, bitch.
Aha! I've trapped you with my demon pussy. Joke's on you, I knew.
Wait, you knowing? I don't... What? Like, I'm not kidding. The introduction of this character is it turns out he is knowingly boinking a demon, and as soon as it reveals itself, he was just like, okay, guess I can stop boinking you. Murder! And it turns into a full demon. Well, I assume his peen might be still in there. I'm not sure. And the overall bluntness of Berserk does not really go away from there. Now, there are additional layers of nuance added to the story, and the atmosphere construction is actually quite well established on top of that storytelling approach. But if that introduction kind of revolts you, I don't think Berserk is necessarily going to be for you. Because our main character, Guts, aka the Black Swordsman, is just the ultimate I don't look at explosions type guy. He laughs at gore and is constantly telling people like, I don't need you, I'm better alone. And so from a character perspective, again, I'm not really digging Berserk. He is quickly then introduced to a small elfin character who's more like a fairy, but they call him an elf. And this is like the wholesome perspective we are then provided to look at Guts. This little elf follows him around, or they kind of keep interacting with each other, just finding each other again and again. And this is the person who is kind of the audience surrogate to constantly be going, look how badass Guts is. To be fair, the following round of Guts is fairly well justified because Guts does save this little elf and cut people in half, all right and left, and it's kind of an inadvertent saving, but the saving still happens. Now, what I will say is that same bluntness is also applied to the action. Guts is just teaming with weapons, a sword that is comically large, that people constantly comment on for being way too large to be a practical sword. He has like a wrist cannon, crossbows, knives, and it's just, I'm going to swing at things and then they die. That is 99% of the action that's presented within the first few volumes, but with the amount of gore and revelry that this story seems to be taking in just sheer violence, it feels appropriate. Again, it's not even my taste, but I can recognize, like, yeah, if you're gonna do it, go all in, and this is the way to do it. And of course, the scene of inadvertently rescuing the little elf concludes with Guts putting the sword in his back while not looking at the POV provided by the art, because god damn it, he's so cool. Guts is then taken prisoner for some reason and tortured in the town for the fact that he killed these people, which in hindsight doesn't make a whole lot of sense because he's definitely powerful enough to just obliterate the guards that are arresting him. He is kind of trying to put himself in a position to get the person he's hunting to the place he's at, but I don't really think he needed to do this thing where he gets taken prisoner and tortured, but it definitely solidifies him as the uber badass who's just gonna be able to take all the pain. But here it is revealed that there is an evil lord who is abusing people and actually cannibalistic, and Guts wants to fight. And in terms of the morality of this story, Guts really is like the good guy, and the only reason that's justified is because the people he's going up against are so comically evil, they literally have pointed teeth, are eating human, and honestly are just demons, like they're possessed by other dimensional demons. That's revealed later on. And there's this tonal clash here where we are getting some of the most blunt gore I have ever seen in a graphic novel. Just over the top celebrations of violence and darkness and death. And then immediately we cut away to like the fairy character having like a reaction, which is just one of the issues with the medium that I do not like when it rears its head. And I maintain not every manga suffers from this. Some of them are extremely good when it comes to finding a comedic tonal balance, but here, it's a bit of a struggle for me. But Guts does manage to escape from his captivity due to a little bit of help from that tiny elf. And again, I'm left wondering, like, did you really need saving or did you just get saved? I'm not sure, and the story seems unsure of it as well, because it wants us to think Guts is the coolest person ever who can handle an entire army on his own, which he does do in this first few volumes. But then he was also just captured by, like, City Watch. And like you could say, oh, but they had like crossbows. Later on, he deflects a wall of crossbow bolts coming at him. We do learn that Guts has a brand on his neck. It's not entirely revealed what the purpose of it here is now, but we then later learn that it actually summons a lot of these demons. It attracts death and danger to him, which is why he has to be this uber killer. And as the evil lord approaches, that brand starts to bleed and Guts tastes his own blood and he's like, what I've been waiting for is coming. But he's also like still a jerk to the elf who heals him in this time from a lot of his torture and provides him the keys. And I know the story is trying to make the reader be like, he's so cool, doesn't need the help, doesn't want the help, the elf could go away. But as like an adult looking back at the situation, I'm just like, yeah, he sucks. Like he's a bad guy. Like I don't want him to get help because he's a piece of shit to this person who's done nothing but help him. But that evil lord has arrived, and just to establish how awful they are, we see them drinking the blood of a child, which I will not show here because I do not want to be demonetized. It was very hard to find panels I could actually show in this novel without being demonetized. But the elf is watching this horrible massacre happen as the lord has arrived with their army and they are just brutally wiping their way through the populace. Guts then shows up and just brutalizes a lot of the foot soldiers that this demon lord brought. So here's where I was like, okay, yeah, he had to have been intentionally caught and tortured because otherwise he could have just easily taken out everyone who was trying to arrest him. Like this clearly establishes that. He even decapitates a horse, which I'm like, that's not, come on. It's just a horse, man. And we also get established that he has weaponry that is not seen by these people before. People are not only in shock at his sword, but his crossbow shoots so fast, they're like, what the hell is that? So I'm really interested to see how that actually gets justified later on. And we also get plenty of the little elf being like, he's so strong. But it is time for the showdown with the evil lord, and here we have Guts just unload a bunch more bolts into the person. Obviously, it does not take them down. They are a demon man. Then Guts even launches them back into a building, and you're like, all right, it looks like he kind of damaged it, but of course not killed it, and it comes back in its full naked demon form. And this is going to be the start of one of my favorite accidentally hilarious trends of Berserk. Guts just always coughs up blood. Every single time he's hit, he coughs up a lot of blood. Not a little bit that's like, oh, there's a cut in your mouth or something like that, maybe you shattered a tooth. He is just constantly shooting out blood from his mouth. I don't know why they decided to make this the ultimate sign that he's taken damage. They'd also have like broken legs and arms and stuff. Clearly there's like injuries all over him, but it always comes with an added, this man tastes iron always. And after being beaten to a point that any human should have died, establishing that Guts is stronger than any normal human being, he manages to whip up his special metal arm, which by the way is a special metal arm, and snap away the wrist, revealing a gun, and he shoots this evil demon in the face, right as the evil demon's like, no human can kill me, which this is a scene like straight out of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's the evil mega vampire in Buffy who's like, no modern weapon can kill me, no human can kill me, and she pulls up an RPG. Guts is pulling a Buffy. I'm just gonna say that right now. He's pulling a Buffers.
No weapon forged can stop me.
This is now.
He then pulls out his sword and decapitates this demon. It's also clearly established that Guts is really enjoying what he's doing here, and he's also searching for the 5 members of the God Hand, so now we're getting some lore. And that was enough of a hook for me to go like, all right, I'm going to continue on despite how much this is not the deepest of literature yet. But after not getting the information he wants, he just sets this demon on fire and walks away because cool guys don't look at burning demons. And that was the first, like, volume of Berserk, which is the one I did the first review on. And I stand by nearly everything I said in that first review. It is, in terms of on its own in storytelling, one of the most just straightforward, no tact, just setup and executions I've ever seen. If you broke it down to bullet points as I've just done, you really do get the entire impact of the story, which is not necessarily the best quality to have. I do want to praise the artwork. It does celebrate violence in the way it wants to, and we get a couple examples of these like cover panels that are woven within where the art is kind of given this extra layer of love and detail, and that helps immerse me, the reader, quite a bit more. Overall though, it's nothing to write home about, and I would give the first volume a 4 out of 10. I do find it to be below average, but Berserk does step it up from here with the next storyline, because it actually decides to add other beats aside from just hero go through trouble, villain, fight, small world building, done. There is actual effort, it appears, in the next storyline. So the next beat of the narrative, though, is essentially Guts running into the fairy elf again, being like, go away, I don't like you, you little weak fairy. I don't like anyone who's weak. They repulse me. And I'm like, oh, you're so cool. You're such a badass, Guts. He then eventually gets into a wagon with a couple of people. He warns them like, hey, you don't want me in your wagon. There are evil spirits chasing me. But the people are like, don't worry about it. Get in. Like, even if you don't believe in evil spirits, if there's a guy who's on the side of the road carrying a massive amount of weaponry and he's like, evil demons are chasing me, maybe don't pick him up if you have your innocent little daughter in the wagon with you. Just an idea. There's a little bit of back and forth between Guts and this old man who's driving the wagon about like the morality of some warfare and how the old man's son died in war. And Guts is like, good, he probably died doing what he wanted. And I'm like, okay, that's not exactly a tactful, tasteful thing to say. And this is where the characterization of Guts actually started to kind of work a bit for me. I don't love him as a character at all. I think there's not much depth to be found, but it is at least somewhat interesting from a storytelling perspective to be following someone who revels in death, has no regard for the people around him's safety, aside from just like, hey, you might die if you're near me. You don't care? Fine. And who is so heavily cursed that you understand the isolation and love of violence that's developed within him. The only really interesting wider beat that happens here is we get to see a dream where Guts is being hounded and chased by something awful, and he's clutching his brand that acts as like essentially Bilbo's sword the entire time. He awakens to a monster on his face, and apparently this type of monster can only exist if there's been like violence, death, bloodshed, which lets Guts know there's probably a lot of violence, death, and bloodshed around. We're in danger. And this is when an army of skeletons appear, and the wagon driver's innocent little daughter dies from a giant stake to the heart. Where does the giant stake come from? Well, the skeleton army threw it, I guess? Guts is warned by his tiny little feller friend that you cannot kill what is already dead, but Guts is like, good! And he just starts waving his sword around, just massacring these skeletons, and turns out, yes, you can kill what's already dead. It just requires a very big, blunt sword. We then get a little bit of like a, hey, watch out, from the fairy, where Guts is like, shut up, I'm busy. That is the voice I imagine he has. We then see the resurrected little girl from the wagon holding her father's head that she has cut off now that she's back and evil. This is just something the comic is doing for shock value, and it's kind of effective. And it also does seem to affect Guts to an extent, because the girl is then able to just walk up and stab him, and he doesn't do anything about it, despite later on us seeing that Guts can move faster than eyesight. So I have no idea why this thing shocked him to that extent, but it did. But he then does what Guts does and just cuts her in half, because Guts. As Dead Meat would say, he then continues on to murder some bastard skellies until there's no more bastard skellies. The little fairy then tries to like comfort Guts and be like, it wasn't your fault. And of course Guts is like, I know it wasn't. Ha 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 ha, stupid fairy, what a dumb thing to say. I don't know why I gave him an accent. And he goes on to like a monologue about how they're better off dead in this world, and the fairy's like, wow, this is the world Guts lives in. It's pretty awful. And as no subtext overt all of this is, I do feel myself getting invested. And there's this thing where like demon voices start just haunting Guts in the midst of all of this, and to scare them off, he whips open his arm cannon and just fires it into the air, and it works. So apparently guns scare even demons. And I don't blame them. Guns are scary. And then we get the setup for the next volume, and I would give this little tiny thing a 5 out of 10. It was slightly more interesting due to some of the dialogue that happened in the previous volume, but it still didn't do enough for me to like fall in love with the story. I think it's anything more than just a lot of violence for violence sake with a really intense atmosphere and personality pasted over. But this next one is where it really cranks up. So we are shown that there is this awful castle where heretics are being executed by these religious looking figures. And there's this gigantic, nasty, evil king looking down on it, clearly quite content to just have a whole bunch of murdering going on of heretics within his land. Guts witnesses this execution happen because he's just here now, and he picks up the head and throws it at the feet of the evil king person. His brand also starts bleeding, letting us, the reader, know that this evil king is obviously not human. I mean, did you see that guy? That's not a human. The evil dude, I'm not gonna show it, just takes this head that was thrown at him and like squeezes it. It's kind of upsetting. I didn't like that, but it establishes him as gross, so needed, I guess? And then Guts runs through the city where he's quartered by a whole lot of heavily armed city guard, and he just easily wipes his way through them with not a whole lot of trouble. I'm just gonna go ahead and show this. I'm gonna get demonetized here. I've accepted that fact. Support me on Patreon if you want to keep hearing my thoughts on Berserk. I'm just left wondering, like, why did you get taken hostage in the first one? You could have gotten that evil guy's attention in so many other ways. You did not need to be tortured and rely on a little elf who you didn't know was coming's healing. We then get another iconic, I'm not gonna face the actual POV perspective shot of Guts, which just was finally when I keyed into the fact that, oh, Guts is kind of flamboyant. Guts is like, look at me. I look awesome doing this. We then get a kind of funny moment where Guts is saved by the fairy, and the fairy's like, you owe me one. And then the fairy's caught by an evil knight, and then Guts cuts his hands off, and it's like, now I don't. And then my biggest characterization criticism, though I guess you could justify within the lore, comes in here. There's a super big evil knight, which, good God, this story does feel like a video game in the way that the combat is structured. Just waves of mindless mercenary guys with unjustified times you lose because cutscene, and then the big evil bigger dude who is, you know, the boss. And in the best example of Berserk trying for humor that actually working so far, this guy tries to like lecture Guts on like, hey, having a big weapon doesn't matter if you can't use it right. And Guts is like, I agree. And then he just really effectively, quickly uses his sword to beat the shit out of this dude. More guards arrive, and apparently it's too many for Guts, even though I'm not sure why it is. And there's someone from the sewer who's like, quick, come here, down. And Guts throws a smoke bomb and disappears into the sewer with a friend. After traveling through the sewers with this friend, they end up in what looks like an apothecary shop to me, and it turns out this was someone who used to work for the Lord about 7 years ago, but the Lord then turned evil after apparently making some pact with a demon. He used to be bad, but now he's like, I enjoy eating humans whole bad. And this little man, who is horribly disfigured and wounded, apparently used to work for the Lord, and after he turned evil and tried to betray him, the Lord took his family and ate him in front of him after disfiguring him. Okay, they are emotional damage. I'm not going to show any of that. Moving on, though, he also says that he has found an evil artifact that Guts recognizes. Correct me if I'm saying this wrong, a behelit? And at this point, Guts decides to start hurting the defenseless, disfigured man, instead of just asking a question like a normal person. And this is where we get the backstory I talked about and how the evil lord went about his business. And I did really like this beat where we have this character talk about how they, even watching their family be eaten, they were not consumed with anger, they were not consumed with anything but fear. And I don't know, I like that. That was a really cool, strong moment there. We learn at this point, though, that that artifact that was found and shown to Guts is actually a key to the 5 God Hand people. So, you know, progressing the lore and story. At this point, though, we cut to that giant guard who Guts beat up but didn't kill for some reason, waking up and being like, I hate Guts more than anyone else in the entire world. And it's like, have you never lost a fight before? Why are you hating this guy that much? So it felt a little extreme to me. Maybe he's under like demonic influence. I'll chalk it up to that. But at this point, the king comes in and is like, everyone out. I'm gonna do something. And the king gets alone with this giant guy who's actually bashing his head against the wall out of anger. Good move there. But at this point, he's like, so you'll do anything to be able to kill Guts. And the guy's like, hell yeah. And so the king's like, okay, take my penis, my demon. And he vomits a penis worm into the guy. And I'm sorry, it's sexual. He even says, "My demon, take it inside of you." You made it weird, man. But we then see the guy seems to be relatively healed and is going to be sent to kill Guts. And one of my least favorite storytelling things, we just get told, oh, because of informants, now the king knows where Guts is. What? I would like a little more justification, but all right. And immediately, taking no time to spread these events out, the guy who has been given the demon penis goes off to kill Guts. There's no spreading things out, no setup payoff. It's not setup and payoff, it's just happening. We then get told by the little tortured guy that there's a way into the castle that Guts can take, but this is all interrupted because, of course, big knight guy who's now possessed by demon penis attacks. After a whole lot of this story's rather simplistic way of showing action, which is just cut, really good cut that ends the fight, we get another iconic shot of Guts knowing he looks great, but the demon penis then shows itself from inside the giant man's gushy innards. And I'm sorry, but the guy is even clearly enjoying it. At this point, though, their fighting has been so intense that it causes the building around them to collapse, and they are able to escape through some of those tunnels they talked about previously. Unfortunately, though, for our boy, a little disfigured man taken prisoner. And here's actually where we get our first interesting kind of character beat for Guts in the entire story, in my opinion, so far. Guts and the fairy learn that this disfigured man has been taken to be executed, and Guts is like, I'm not gonna save him, it's not my job, I don't care. And then that's kind of causing an issue with the fairy, who's like, no, we need to go save this guy, but Guts is like, I got what I need from him, I don't wanna. But it starts to bother Guts, and he starts seeing the memories of the guy telling him these awful stories, and he's like, Now, he does finally kind of realize I'm feeling compassion after bullying the little elf a whole lot more. But time is up, and now it is up to just the elf to try and stay the execution, which they fail at miserably. Like, they bounce off the executioner's axe, and the executioner's just holding him like, what is this? But Guts does not actually stop the execution, and it's followed through with. The little disfigured man is now in hell. Guts does come to the people who are disposing of the body, though, and he makes a pledge where he will not fail to take out this evil demon like the disfigured man did, which is like, Guts, do you have no tact at all? We then get Guts dealing with more of these voices. More on that later. But after turning down these voices that seem to be offering him something, Guts pledges,
I will do it with my own flesh and blood.
And with the elf having been taken prisoner during the execution, he is then brought to the king's daughter. And this is where the story actually really gets to get some dynamic elements put into play. Because we learn that the king is keeping his daughter in complete isolation while he is getting rid of the heretics, and he has brought her the elf to keep her company. And there's this moment where the king tries to touch his daughter, but he is physically revolted or stopped by it. It's strange. It seems to be the internal conflict between the king that is still in there and the demon possessing him. We then have Guts breaking into the castle through the ways that were shown to him before, I assume, and then that giant guard who actually didn't kill when the building fell down appears once again. And then in the funniest moment of action in the entire volume set that I read, he cuts off this guy's head, which is then like, I will feed off your body, and tries to come at him. He takes it on his sword and smashes it against the wall like a bug with a fly swatter. And it's like, that's kind of funny. It's just funny to me. There's this like hell demon, and he's like, ew. We then get another backstory from Teresa's perspective, where she actually says that her father used to be a good man, but it wasn't until her mother was taken prisoner by pagans who were saying, hey, we will let her go if you let us practice our religion freely, but the king did not agree because of religious differences, and then they killed her mother. And that's what drove the king to be like it is now. Obviously, there's some holes in that story. We then get another panel where Guts is making his way through the castle. He takes out just a metric ton of guards who eventually start running away from him. They bring in another big guy, but it's like, he already dealt with the demonic big guy. What do you think big guy's gonna do? And Guts gets rid of him like that. Like, duh. Come on, video game logic. Escalation of threat each time. We then get also my first favorite real moment of characterization for our elf friend, who is let to go to help Guts by Teresa, because they've explained the situation and what's going on. And he even comes back and he says, hey, I'll see you later. I'm not leaving you. We're gonna get you out of here. Which was like, oh, it's a nice little counterweight to Guts, I guess. That's cool. And when he says that to the princess, her face is so totally weird compared to everything else happening. We've had waves of blood and gore, and then there's just this photo where she's like, oh, that's so nice. Guts continues to brutalize his way through the rest of the castle until he has his final showdown with the Demon Lord. Once again, we fought a Demon Lord in the last story, but this is the bigger, badder Demon Lord. And it's revealed that the guy is freaking monstrous, because, you know, of course. I do want to praise the creature design for Berserk at this point, because there's a really strong consistency to it, but each monster manages to feel quite different in its design and movement in the panels, if that's even the way you can describe it. I don't know, I haven't reviewed too many graphic novels. But I just very much so appreciate the consistency here. Now, once again, the fight between Guts and this demon is so intense, the foundations of the very castle begin to shake, because Berserk likes to reuse some stuff. And this causes Teresia to actually start, like, moving about and being like, oh god, I maybe shouldn't be here. Guts takes an insane amount of damage, though, and it is not looking good for him. And there was even a to be continued at this point, which, if I was a reader going through the first time and couldn't immediately turn the page, I would have been like, alright, you got me. I'm interested. We get the elf at this point whipping out the bell halt, which is like, why? Don't, that maybe not, you do the best, that's not good, don't do that. And we even have the Demon Lord being like, sweet, now I don't have to go look for that. I thank you, elf. But at this point, right when he is at his most grotesque and about to strike the finishing blow on Guts, Teresia walks in. And she sees her father in all his horror. This provides Guts enough time to get back on his feet and the fight resumes. And Guts, in a completely brilliant move, and something that is totally justified and earned, grabs the daughter and holds her in front of him to stop the attack from the Demon Lord. Some people are going to say that's morally questionable. I think to stop a mass murderer, this is understandable. It's a demon. Like, you gotta use what you gotta use. And continuing the reusage theme within Berserk, he whips out his hand cannon and fires, because that's his, like, why don't you start with that, man? That's a really good weapon. This, with a couple more hacky slashes, is enough to bring down the Demon Lord. Yeah! And then Guts kind of pushes past the elf and Teresia and starts brutalizing her father. There's emotional trauma and screaming, people being like, you're awful, Guts, him being like, this is what's gotta be done, so he's just like, rah, with a knife. And for the first time, someone just out loud's like, so you're superhuman, Guts. Cool, got it. You're not normal. Guts then falls off the demon and starts laughing to himself, because edgy. But the Demon Lord's blood pours all over the whole thing, and it activates. That's apparently what activates it. And now they are taken to the dimension of the 5 God Hand, which this dimension is totally original and not taking from any iconic piece of art ever, anything. No, it's completely original.
And going up the stairs, and going down the stairs, and going up the sideways stairs.
We are then told the Great Ones are coming, and now we see the 5 God Hands, which again, complements the creature design. They look very Hellraiser-y to me. They start talking to the Demon Lord that Guts has defeated and being like, you must make one sacrifice for us to continue to let you be who you are, and, like, you know, blah, 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 exposition, demon-y relationship stuff. Guts is like trying to get up and fight one more time, and they look at him and they're like, you're beneath our notice. And I'm like, ha! But you noticed him.
You have heard of me.
Yeah, you little stinker. Guts gets up and tries to go for an attack. And it's super ineffective. They're telekinetic, Guts. Maybe do some reconnaissance, man. God! But the offer is made once again to the Lord. You must sacrifice your daughter and able to maintain your demony goodness. I can show you essentially none of what happens next, but I can tell you, turns out the truth of the mother's death is much more complicated. Actually, she was one of the heretics, and the king found out about this. In a blind rage, he murdered all of the heretics who he found having an orgy with his wife on, like, a demon god, and the only one left alive was his wife. This is when the evil gods stepped in, and they promised him no more sorrow and despair if he went with them, and this is when they turned him into the demon he is now, and then he killed his wife. So there's like a cyclical nature of they need to go full circle here. But remembering his family and his daughter, the demon actually says no, and he is dragged into hell with the disfigured little guy leading the arms that are dragging him. Oh, Vegas, that was his name, I forgot to say it. But he gets his revenge. Good on you, little disfigured guy. Because Guts has the brand, he also is grabbed, and in his, like, final effort to have some damage done here, he whips out his arm cannon again and fires at one of the 5 God Hands.
I'm a firing my leg on!
But establishing an escalation of threat, it does nothing. It blows up before it can even touch him. But this does result in Guts being dropped by the people dragging him to hell. I'm not entirely sure why. But our party then wakes up back in our dimension. Teresia is very much so traumatized by this, quite understandably, and she is then wanting to die. Guts, being the sympathetic man that he is, says, go ahead! Do it. Tact, man. Tact. Elf Fairy doesn't like this and smacks Guts for his words and stops Tracia from actually killing herself. But as this is happening, the floor from beneath her, because of all the structural damage, starts to fall, and she goes into a pit. Guts extends her sword and she grabs onto it, causing her hands to bleed. She then decides to blame Guts for all of this for some reason, and he is now the target of her anger, and she threatens to kill him. And for the first time, we see actual emotional anguish on Guts' face because this has gotten to him. And that is where I will end my deep dive review, because Golden Age starts next, and I want that to be its own separate video. Overall, though, this next story that occurred, I would give a 7.5 out of 10. It left me with a lot to be desired still, and I feel like Berserk has some maturing to do in terms of how it handles its themes. But overall, it actually invested me in characters, the mythos of what's going on, and I'm interested what is next for Berserk. This does, to me, read like a very talented freshman in a writing class. It is someone who has not honed their skill, but has an important story to tell. There is some unnecessary, over-the-top, edgy things to try and hook a wider audience, but at the same time, I respect how clearly influential this story became and what it is already accomplishing. So I do not love the first volume of Berserk. I would say I am fine with it, but it has set up the rest of the story enough for me to go, all right, everyone tells me Golden Age is great. I'm excited for Golden Age. But let me know what you think of Berserk in the comments down below, and like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here, and have a good one, y'all. Peace, bye! And I'd like to record a special shout out to Diva Nynaeve, my latest high tier patron, and for everyone who helped me build the thumbnail for this video. Thank you!